This week, let's talk about the economic justification for a project. Before a hospital or health system hands over $2 million to purchase a new CT scanner, the CFO is going to want some pretty good reasons to fund that project. Today, I'm going to cover 4 topics related to making an economic justification for a project. They are business case, use case, certificate of need laws, and project justification in radiology. Business case is a part of the project proposal that outlines why it is good for the business to do this project. Sometimes it is called a cost-benefit analysis. Whatever you call it, it lays out how much it will cost to do the project, how much the project will benefit the organization, and the risks of the project. And this is easy to do if you can express all of those variables in the same unit of measure, such as money. In other words, if you can say it will cost this much to do the project, and we expect to get this much money as a return on our investment, and we might lose this much money if things go wrong, well, that's a pretty simple comparison. However, in healthcare, a lot of the time the benefits are things like improved patient safety or being able to schedule more patients in a day, and you may have to try to quantify those things in an estimated dollar amount to be able to make a good business case for doing the project. Use case. The use case is written in narrative language and describes how the system should function from the user's perspective. Basically, it lays out in a very specific step-by-step way how you can use the system to perform a common task. Let's say you want to do a PACS upgrade and you want the radiologist to be excited and in favor of this PACS upgrade. You could present a use case for the new system that shows how easier it is to read studies with the new system. The use case might show that for every study, the new system requires 3 fewer mouse clicks to read a study. You know radiologists would go wild for that. The use case document uses flow diagrams and lots of words you might recognize from another class. Words like actor, transaction, trigger, scenario, profiles. What do these words make you think of? Hopefully you recognize those terms as IHE terms. Use case often borrows heavily from IHE, and IHE borrows from the use case ideal. Certificate of need. So I imagine you read the Certificate of Need webpage and your first thought was, what does this have to do with me? Well, if your hospital wants to open up an outpatient imaging center across the street or down the road from your hospital, well, that's a healthcare facility and it's subject to Certificate of Need laws if they have them in the state you're working in. So let me give you a real-world example of Certificate of Need. I worked for a hospital on the south side of town, and we competed for patients with the hospital on the north side of town. The radiology director at my hospital got the idea to open an outpatient MRI center on the north side of town. And he wanted to build it as close to our competition as possible. So we worked up the project proposal and discovered that the state would not approve any sort of imaging center within 10 miles of the hospital on the north side of town. So we found a site that we could build on that was 12 miles north of the competing hospital. So it was far enough away from our competition that we could get a certificate of need for an MRI center in that community. So we had to make the case for building that imaging center, and we got our certificate of need approved and built the MRI center. And the hospital in the north promptly went out and built a full imaging center, including X-ray, CT, and MRI, to our west. And I'm sure those 2 hospitals are still competing for patient imaging dollars to this day. So in addition to getting your healthcare organization to fund your project, you may need to get approval from the state if the project involves a new building or offering a new service in existing location. So if you want to add CT to an existing outpatient center, you may need another certificate of need for a CT scanner in that community. And last but not least, let's talk about project justification in radiology. And so just looking at the slide, which one of those 2 waiting rooms, assuming those are CT waiting rooms, do you think needs a new CT scanner? And which one probably is going to have a hard time explaining why their CT scanner is not very busy at all? And what I love about the slide with the nearly empty waiting room is look at the Coke machine. They don't even bother to stock the bottom 2 shelves of the Coke machine because they know there's no patients in that waiting room. Anyway, in slide 3, we talked about the proper project management use of the term use case. However, radiology administrators will sometimes employ the term use case to mean if we buy a new piece of equipment, will it get used enough to be worthwhile? Really, we should call this a utilization case, but they often call it a use case. So here's an example of what I mean. Let's say you have 2 MRI machines and they're both booked out for the next 2 months, meaning the first appointment for a non-emergency MRI scan is 2 months from today. People don't like to wait months for a scan. The clinicians don't want to wait months for the results. If we don't get those patients in faster, the clinicians are going to take their business to another facility, and that can get the patients scanned. They can get them scanned much sooner. So the solution might be to buy an MRI scanner. But are we going to use it enough to make it cost effective? It costs several $1,000,000 for an MRI scanner. We have to build a room for it, so there's construction costs. We have to hire new techs to run the new scanner. If we spend all that money just to clear up the current backlog of patients and we don't have enough patients to keep the 3 scanners busy, then we've lost a lot of money. On the other hand, if the increase in MRI patients continues and we continue to get further and further backlogged in our schedule, then we really do need that new scanner. That's an example of a utilization case that you might need to make for a project that involves adding or removing a piece of equipment. Yep, I said removing a piece of equipment. That's a project, believe me. If your patient volume decreases to a point that you don't need 2 MRI scanners, you may be part of a team that decommissions and removes it. You won't be carrying it out the door, although, oddly enough, I have done that, but you will have to remove it from the network in your PAC system. Okay, so this is getting really long. Thank you for watching.